Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Bonjour, Bartek. How are you doing?
Bonjour. Bonjour. Good, Ryan. How are you?
Merci. I'm
No
doing
mercy
very
for
well.
you today, my friend.
Oh, none today. Parlez-vous français? No, I am doing fantastique. I'm here today to talk to you about a movie that I watched, and I'm sure you're here today to talk about some Polish facts that you've learned in the interim of time. And we're all here today, or tonight, I don't know, when are people listening to this?
What is this?
What is this? It's our podcast where we sit down and we go over a movie that has come recommended. The name is Pictures Powwow. We are the original PP. Yes, that's right, Pictures Powwow. We have a conversation about a film. And who recommended the film this time? Does anyone know? Hands up. Hands up.
Talking about yourself, are you?
Oh, Bartek, are you indicating that it was me that recommended the film? Oh, well, indeed it was. It was me, and I don't like
To answer your question,
implications.
yes.
I don't. Well, we.
No, just me.
We.
Actually, just you.
Escargot. Let's escargot to the polls.
It's like a joke.
Oh, well, it's a bit late.
That's a punchline to a joke my dad once told.
What, escargot?
It was something like, what did the man say when he saw a snail driving a car with an S painted on it?
Escargot.
Look at that escargot.
Well, we're here today to talk about a French film.
But you forgot to laugh at the joke.
Didn't you hear my laugh? Go back in the episode and listen again. I was laughing on the inside.
Can we stop the recording so I can play it back?
No, you have to have omniscience or wait. One of the two abilities. But we're here today to talk about a French film, hence all of the French up in here. And it was recommended by me. This is the film Delicatessen. And what a film this is. Now, I did choose this because I have a very specific relationship and history with this, but first, before we get into all of that good stuff, how would one recommend this film to someone who hasn't seen it? Because we are going to talk about it, we are going to get into all of the details and spoilers, but we want to make sure that you people out there who haven't seen it get a little bit convinced to go out of your way to give the film a watch before we give away all of the juicy, raw parts of it. Bartek, how would you discuss this with someone in that way?
How would I pitch it to them?
Yes.
Well, I suppose I'd tell them that this is a film set in a sort of vague dystopian time, set in an apartment building. It's run by a butcher, I believe he is.
Mm-hmm.
And all of the tenants of this apartment building are, very weird people. They've all got things going on, and the butcher that runs the apartment is not the kindest man, let's say. There's quite a bit going on in this one. I don't know what really the through line of it is, but yeah, you're following primarily, you follow everyone, but primarily an entertainer who has moved to this apartment building and is striking up a bit of a relationship with the daughter of the butcher. And yeah, you're just seeing a bunch of different things play out.
The main character is a stranger. He's someone that's come in, but he is the object of much desire for the tenants in this particular complex. So that is a way to go about describing it. Make sure everyone to give this a watch for yourself, because now it's time to talk about it. So I saw this film on television a number of years ago now. Rachel and I caught it on TV, and we may have missed the first couple of minutes of the film, and we're scratching our head of what was the deal here. We saw like the very last moments of the cold open to the movie. And we were like, what is this? What's going on? And we didn't know how much of, like, how far in it was or what the deal, like, okay, here's the credits now. but what's happening here? And so we were very entertained by this, very perplexed, but entertained. We had never heard of this film. I didn't put together until much later on that it's by some of the same people who would go on to do other films that I am aware of or have seen before, and will be influential, this movie, to films I like. But I saw this and I was laughing a lot. I was mesmerized. I was drawn into the particular strand of strange this is. This is a film that is very sweet. It's very sweet and wholesome, whilst also still having the ability to be very cruel and gross and absurdist and overtly just silly comedy fun. I remembered a whole slew of these characters, but even sitting down to rewatch it again today, I haven't seen it since that first watch. There was elements of it that was flooding back to me like, oh, that's right. That's right. This guy and this woman and this bit. And oh my God, of course, this is how it all ties together. And I was just having a blast revisiting it. But yes, we saw it a number of years ago, just randomly on television late at night. And we were just marveling at this weird French film. So that's my history, and I recommended it because I wanted to see the full film. I wanted to give it a full watch through, and as we discussed a bit at the end of the last episode, we haven't done too many French films or French language movies. So I thought it was a good opportunity. And I'll just say, hands up right now, I kind of didn't remember how this movie is actually really good to pick in the year of the musical of our podcast, because this movie has a lot of musical sequences without being a musical in the way that you expect, like in the way that you expect that to be.
Yeah,
but it is. There are musical sequences.
It's not a musical film, but it's a film that enjoys rhythm
and choreography,
and editing it all together.
So, what is your relationship with Delicatessens?
I hadn't seen or heard of Delicatessen before, you recommended it on the podcast. So I was going in completely blind. So, yeah.
Have you been aware of the people who made this movie? Have you ever heard of Amelie? That's like the real big film of theirs. Are you in any familiarity?
I may have heard the name, but I don't know it.
Amelie is, I've never seen it. It's always been on the watch list, but Amelie is one of those ones where it has a famous poster. It's of the main person herself, and she has like this, very pale porcelain skin, and she has a black bob haircut, and she has like this very big rictus grin on her face, and it's a very striking image, but it's a very beloved film. It's been on the list, but this director, or one of these directors, did Alien 4 Resurrection, which is a film that I'm deeply familiar with. I've seen it many times over.
Is that one of the good ones?
No, it's one of the infamously bad ones.
One of the bad ones, okay.
And the lead actor of this movie is in that film as well. And he is over the top, and his character's in a motorized wheelchair in that movie, and his wheelchair is filled with guns because they're like a mercenary group. It is a famous bad alien movie, but it's a case of like they hired the guy who did Delicatessens to do Alien, and so he did exactly what you would expect, which is there's a famous shot of one of the people has the chest burster inside of them, and they start screaming, and the camera goes down goes to their mouth and down their throat, and you're inside of their chest now with the little alien screaming at the camera, and it's like, yeah, the guy who did Delicatessen sure did this movie too. So it's a whole saga, but
yeah, I feel like I can see that being by the same guy.
Yes, it's a very over the top movie, but we're talking about Delicatessens. What was your reactions to this? You went in blind. You didn't really know anything about this. You hadn't heard of it. So how did you feel?
I think I went through this one kind of similar to how I went through the Suspiria remake that we did a couple of weeks ago. I didn't particularly love it, but I enjoyed having it on because there was just a lot of bizarre things happening. yeah, a lot of very funny things, like the lady who keeps trying to commit suicide by creating these really uh elaborate but not too long Rube Goldberg machines, trying to get
So,
someone else to indirectly kill her.
yes.
Like all of that I found really funny. Um yeah, and a lot of the ways that the characters would just behave, very bizarre. Yeah, very absurdist, very black comedic sensibilities. And whenever the film did get into the more musically elements, I found myself really enjoying that. Like we have a scene early on where it starts with someone having sex, and
The
you're here
butcher, yeah.
the butcher, yep, and you're seeing and hearing the springs in the mattress, uh, not creak but
Squeak.
squeak, yep. And then it's cutting to a bunch of things happening at the same time all around the building that have the exact same rhythm, and it's really fun to follow along with.
You see through camera movements how the sound of each one of these things travels through a pipe or a vent or down the stairwell, and how it causes this cacophony of sounds.
Hmm.
It's a very interesting way to put things together. Yes, I still had a good time with this overall. I appreciated it a lot more. I appreciated how it had a lot of setups and a lot of payoffs. There's
Hmm.
so many things, little details, little gags, little pieces like the two children and
Yeah,
how they
they're the
keep
ones that I keep
messing
thinking of.
around,
Yeah, they keep
or
messing
obviously
around.
the Australian thing, where that's a big deal and how that comes back, or even the taps and how they work and how that pays off in the end. And there's so many interesting things that work on a great like setup payoff level, but also on a humorous level. Like, oh, that's an amusing thing that they've included here. Like the butcher getting the mademoiselle, the one that is the whore of the building. Everyone treats her like she's a whore, and then she gets kidnapped by the resistance group, and they're like, oh, okay, whatever, like, okay,
The guy who
whatever.
kept making excuses like, I don't know if it's a woman, it could be a man.
Yeah.
Just like very stubbornly being like, I didn't
I
make a
don't
mistake.
know.
I'm sure I made the right thing.
And the one who kissed her as if it's like, in case I don't come back, is like this complete stranger. But I like the detail of she's with the butcher. They have a relationship. They have a sexual relationship, and it's very transactional as well. And she is. I don't even know how do you. I'm not familiar with the name of it, but she's doing that thing where she's put little glass jars on his back to like suction onto
Oh,
parts of
I've
his
had that happen
back.
to me.
Oh,
Yeah.
you've had that?
Yeah, when I in 2014 when I had my, back issue, I'd go to the Chinese doctor. That
Right.
was one of the things he did to me.
So she was doing that, and it's just not spoken. It's just happening in the scene because it's a visually interesting thing to put. And it gives you like a further understanding of her new aginess because
Hmm.
she's the one that's like, yeah, I'm Virgo, it's the year of the Virgo, right? All that kind of stuff. So to have her doing this kind of the treatment to him, but I
Hmm.
like the fact that he wants it. So this character in no other scene would indicate that he's open-minded to stuff like this, but there's a scene where here it is.
Hmm.
And I just found it amusing. But uh, yeah, I'm a little bit surprised though that you didn't gravitate towards this more. I felt like this is what I now label as the Bartek type movie, in quotations, the Bubble Boy effect, where we have a whole cavalcade of fun, eccentric ensemble characters, and we're driving to a very specific end point narratively.
I had this sense of like, I bet if I rewatched this, a couple of years in the future, I bet I'd love this a lot more.
Mm.
Yeah, it felt like one of those cases where maybe I'm just not getting it right now.
You can put it with True Stories, do a double feature.
Yeah, true. I've said it many times. That's one film that I just keep meaning to go back to at some point because I'm like, that feels like something I should love.
So, what do you think held you back on Delicatessens?
Uh, Not too sure, really. Um, I don't know. What would you say is like the main appeal of this to you? Is
Uh,
it the comedy or?
oh yeah, the filmmaking especially is top notch because as we went through, they have a lot of very comedic bits, slapstick bits that feel like from the vaudeville era. The woman who doesn't want to wear glasses, but wouldn't you know it, she's prepped for this, but things go awry, and now she's pouring the coffee too much, and this, and the sugar, and oh,
The clumsy running joke,
with
yeah.
the very Buster Keaton, W.C. Fields, all of that stuff, but it's elevated to this degree further because of the filmmaking itself, the way the camera moves, the music, the editing especially. I think it's all captured perfectly. I think the film flags up what it's about and how it's going to go about everything in the cold open. The cold open is masterclass of storytelling and tone and atmosphere, and it's got very little dialogue, and you are picking up on the context clues of what's going on, and you understand immediately pretty much what the movie is going to be about. Okay, here's our preview. It does the horror movie sting of like, here's the kill, the cold open kill, and now we're going to follow our main characters or main character who could be next, and or you assume they're going to buck the trend of this. And so in a weird way, it has the deep understanding of the narrative conventions of multiple types of genres, where it's like your horror genre, your old school comedy sensibilities, your musical stuff. Like, it understands all of these things. And what I think is the huge appeal of it is how it melds them together and transforms it with its own unique identity and unique flair, with the editing, with the way that it is just constructed. So for me, the big selling point is how it has a deep understanding of things that we know, but has the ability to mold them into something unique. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I would say.
Right. Yeah, maybe it just was that I wasn't in the right headspace for it. Because, yeah, it all, everything that I saw in the film, everything that I think back on, like, it does sound like something I should have loved a bit more. And there were definitely a couple of characters that I was like, oh, yeah, every time it cut back to them, like, I was sitting up and I was really engaged. Like the lady that keeps trying to kill herself, the man who lives in like the most disgusting pigsty of a room filled with like snails and frogs and just wet everywhere.
It's water, goo, everything, yes. He has a TV that's a fish tank, basically.
Hmm.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he has some sort of fondness for them because like when the building gets flooded at the end, he's like, "Go, you're free."
He also eats them.
And he eats the snails. That's true. And he's got a big pile of shells.
There's a wide array of personalities that live in the complex, but they're all complicit
Hmm.
in what is keeping it together, which is cannibalism. The premise of the movie really is about how we have a horror situation. Our main character is lured into a trap. We know the trap. He does not know the trap. And then the comedy of errors ensue from there, as he is the handyman who's a former clown entertainer who has a tragic backstory, a very funny tragic backstory, but a tragic backstory nonetheless. And the place is, yeah, it's this dystopian world in which everything's dying. Like, it's all decay, it's all miserable. The
Hmm.
optimists, pff, what's that? Like, optimism, what's that?
The film's
And
very yellow.
it's very vomit color is the way to describe it. It's just
Yucky
sick.
yellow.
It's a sick looking movie, but it's still visually appealing because it lines up with what the film itself is doing. It's not like when I talk about how there are modern movies and shows where they have like this sickly color palette. It's like, yeah, but guys, this is a Superman movie. Why does it look like it's shot in a concentration camp?
Yeah.
This is a film where it's like, this is a film in a universe where everything is like dying and gross and
Hmm.
decaying and just icky, and so it
Yeah.
matches. But
And the ending of the film contrasts it when it gets rid of that filter.
and everything's like, yes, it's like the clouds have parted, and yeah, but as I was saying, like, you are drawn in because our main character is unaware of the dangers that lie before him, and that everyone he's interacting with knows. And everyone he's interacting with not only knows, but they look forward, or they don't, but are complicit to what will be the inevitable outcome. And you're sitting there because you know what movies like. Well, how's our main character going to break the system? Is he going to get out of this, and how so? And he's such an upbeat, optimistic person. He's just very matter of fact and happy go lucky. He sees a problem, he fixes it. And that's good because his job is here to be the maintenance
And
man.
there's a lot of ironic humor where like he'll pretend that he's been decapitated and has an axe in his head because like, it's just a little joke.
Yeah, I'm a circus person. I'm just practicing.
And he doesn't know that like, oh, that's probably the reality of previous tenants.
Yes. So there's a whole lot of stuff. I just want to praise the casting of this movie. Every person visually is striking to look at. Like, you remember them because they all are weird looking people. Every single person in this movie is that scene in Fargo where they're describing Steve Buscemi. You know, just kind of funny looking.
Yeah.
That's everyone in this movie. Everyone is just kind of funny looking in their own way. Like the main love interest. She's a beautiful woman, but also she's just kind of funny looking. Just her hair is so coiffed, and she has like these really little but buggy eyes and the glasses that accentuate that. And just everything about this movie, every person is memorable because visually speaking, you can't help but be like, oh, the woman who commits suicide with her like big teeth and the huge glasses and the hairstyle that's like 10 feet tall.
She looks like a caricature of like a stern librarian or, you know, pencil pushing lady.
Would you be shocked to learn that Adam Elliott, the creator of Mary and Max and of course Harvey Crumpet, loves this movie?
No, I'm not shocked.
I was shocked because I recently saw his newest film, Memoir of a Snail, and I was like, holy shit, this movie, Delicatessen, oh god, he just took from Delicatessen. And then I remembered, and this isn't a spoiler, but the main character's father is a Frenchman and is voiced by the lead actor of this film.
In Memoir of a Snail?
Memoir of a Snail, yes.
Okay.
Her father is voiced by the lead actor of Delicatessen.
The former clown guy?
Yes.
Oh.
And so I'm like, of course. And the whole thing in Memoir of a Snail is she collects snails. There's a snail room in this movie, and there's shells, and it's like, oh my god. And the opening credits of this film are pretty much replicated in Memoir of a Snail, but in stop motion form. So I was like, oh, okay. So I just had this new like, and we were describing the woman trying to kill herself character. That's a kind of design that you could see in an Adam Elliott movie. Like this exaggerated lady with the big teeth and the glasses and the hair that's like taller than her. Like, you know, it's so silly. But yeah. So I just wanted to reference that fact. So, what are some things you want to talk about with Delicatessens? Where do you want to jump in?
Good question. What else is there?
This movie stumped you, huh?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I wish there was more that I could have gotten out of it, really.
Wow, this movie is a rare exception for you. It's absurdist. It's so over the top, but it also, I feel, knows when to pull back. I found a sense of serenity rather than chaos in Delicatessens. I don't know if you would line up with that, but when one describes this movie the way we are, for those who haven't seen it, it may sound like this movie is nonsensical and maybe it's very loud and over the top, or even something reminiscent of things we love like Lemonade Joe, where that movie is just so go, 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 go. I really like how we can have all of this crazy stuff, and yet the film is quiet in my mind. Like, yes, we have
Mm.
these loud sequences where the characters are screaming and this, but we have these many moments of just vignettes or windows into these people's lives, weird details like the old lady who's always knitting, but the thing she's knitting is
Mm.
attached to this thing that spins around, so
So
it's
it's like
always being
unknitting
undone.
it. Yeah, it's a real iconic visual, really memorable visual.
And the central romance is also quiet. They have they have dialogue, but it's if anything, you could, and I say this with the highest praise, but you could turn off the sound and you can understand the scenes that they're going through the way the camera is framed, through the outfits they were wearing, through the actors' expressions, as well as their body language. It actually made me think of, weirdly enough, early M. Night Shyamalan, where M. Night, remember when we did Unbreakable, and you could just have these frames of scenes where it's like, oh, I understand what's going on because, like, here's a doorway and here's a character and here's this, and we would be in these rooms. It made me think of some of those moments, weirdly enough. Even though they're very different movies, I was thinking, like, oh, remember the days where M. Night Shyamalan could be a great visual storyteller with very absurd premises? Like, Unbreakable, if handled incorrectly, would be an absurd premise. But it's handled with that thing. And this is in a case where this is an absurd premise, and it is handled with the correct amount of insanity. But I found that this movie made me very serene. It made me very calm. I was very much enjoying, like, for instance, the squeaking bed scene where he has to fix the bed, and you led into this scene thinking, or at least I was, oh, she's going to maybe try and seduce him, or maybe he's going to be squeaking the bed and the butcher's going to come in and think something hanky panky's going on or some nonsense. And let's both get on the bed and start squeaking. I'm like, oh, they're going to look like they're having sex or something or other. But instead, it just evolves into this very not elaborate per se, but very intricate little dance number in a way where they're not dancing per se, but they're just bobbing up and down on the bed and turning in unison and pausing in unison, and it's like, oh,
It's
this is a dance number without it being a dance.
going back to what you were saying before about how, you know, on on paper all of this stuff sounds like it is a loud, bombastic kind of film. It is very weird that it ends up being a lot more atmospheric, if anything, which is kind of what I was saying earlier about how, like, I enjoyed having this on, just like being in the tone of the film, where you have all these people who are in this absurd situation and occasionally do some stuff that's very silly, but they feel very worn down.
They are they are accepting of their fate, but also some of them annoyed by it. I liked the establishing shots where we would just cut to an exterior, and it would just be like, this broken down, what looks like the ruins of a post-apocalyptic world. But you're like, oh no, that's where our characters are. That's where we live
Hmm.
in this movie. Okay, but then after a certain point, because of the repetition of it, you just start to absorb, like, the cloudy haziness, and we've gone past that point of it being gross or it being repellent to accepting that this is where we live now, and kind of finding this, like, the strange beauty of this stuff. And I mentioned him earlier, but Adam Elliott, for instance, with his style, that's exactly the same thing too. It's like, oh, they're so gross and whatever, but by the end of Harvey Crumpet, you look at Harvey Crumpet and you smile at seeing this cute little
Yeah,
character
a bit of an
because,
ugly, cute kind of
yeah,
look.
and that's how I feel about this movie in general. Like, I was looking at our main man, our main guy, and I was like, he's a funny looking guy, and, like, he's very he's a very strange looking man. So when they reveal he used to be a clown, and of course he's a circus entertainer, that makes sense. But then there are these moments where he's just sitting there quiet, neutral expression in a beautiful, like, turtleneck with suspenders, and I'm like, this is a handsome looking man. And then he'll turn around and do something silly, and you're like, oh, right. And that's this movie constantly. Like, if anything, the lead actor is the great champion of how to understand delicatessens, because he is the kind of the embodiment of the film. Like, I think it wouldn't work as well without him being there. He's
Mm.
so great.
This is another film where the main character is just central to the identity. It's not about, well, it is about, the whole supporting cast, but having that main character nail the central idea is a big positive for this film.
Well, why don't we talk about him some more? What did you feel about good Louison? How did you feel about him, main man?
Oh, he was really fun. It was fun watching him get along with the love interest. I like the scene where he was showing her his old performance with his partner, and how, fond he was of that partner when he showed up on the screen. It's like, that's him right there, the monkey.
And we get tipped off before that it's a monkey as well when she's looking through his like stuff, and you realize that, oh, it's a monkey. And you could even guess too, because the little hat, Livingston, the hat, and you're like, oh, and Livingston, of course, is a reference too. But like, oh, it's a monkey, but it's a chimp, but he keeps treating it like it was a person. Like, oh, I learned this from my partner, Livingston. And you're like, oh,
Mm.
yes. And then, oh, it's a chimp. Oh, I see. Oh, how they ate him. And she's reacting because she thinks it's a person. It's like, oh no, we do that too. Oh boy. Ooh. And he's a vegetarian. That's important to know. Our main character is a vegetarian. He doesn't
Right,
eat meat,
yes, yeah.
which makes him an outsider already, but also the tenants are upset because he's so skinny. He's so skinny. I don't know if we're going to survive long off of this guy. Hence, there's more annoyance that he keeps being allowed to live longer than other tenants, because it's like, even when we eat him, it won't last long.
Mm.
It'll be a long, because they keep complaining about like how they keep eating their tenants quicker, like the meat that they keep being given, like keeps getting consumed quicker and quicker and quicker. But let's talk about like our main character and his romantic entanglements. She's interested in him more than he was interested in her. Like, she's pursuing him.
Mm.
That's how it starts. And what did you feel about that aspect of it? Because we learn throughout the course of things, directly but also indirectly, that this is her pattern. This is her kind of MO. She becomes attached to the tenants, and she imprints on them, or she like imbues them with something else because it's the closest way she can escape. Like, that's the argument her dad makes about this. Like, you always do this. You always beg for them to not to die, and this and this and this. But hey, then the next one comes along, and you moved on.
He'll do anything for her. And then he smacks her.
Yes. Well, he has to put her in line, you see. But how do you feel about her character and the relationship aspect? And like in that, where it even propositions like, is this relationship a pure one, or is it just another form of the corrupt life that lives here in this apartment?
I guess the thing that stood out to me most with their relationship was actually one of the comedic scenes where she is very clumsy. There's a lot of scenes of her, like, pouring the tea, and he catches on to that, and like he's, taking steps to, stop the tea from being spilled, or like holding the cup still. So just seeing like how the comedy interacts with the romantic development was something that really stood out to me.
The physical ability of how he held that cup as she was pouring it all over the place, and he's managing to get it all in, was mind-boggling. Like, I can't help but think about the practicality of filming that, and like, now we have to do a different take. It didn't work. That, like, it was so well, because I was expecting it to be, oh, the classic, oh, she pours it and then it pours on him. Oh no. But because of his background, he's a perfect scene partner for her. And so the comedy of errors is actually about the joy of seeing him pretty seamlessly make the error not happen
And they play
to the best of his abilities. Yeah.
and they play violin together.
They play violin. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's cello, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they play a guitar-looking thing where you use a thing to make it. What do they call the thing?
The which part? The actual
the like stick thing that they rub against the string.
I can't remember what that's called off the top of my head. The bow. You know who she reminded me of, actually, visually speaking? She reminded me of Susan Sarandon,
Hmm.
specifically in
The
Witches of
Witches of
Eastwick,
Eastwick.
because she also has the glasses, the hair, the cello, the bass, the cello, and all of that, and she plays. It reminded me of her, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And then they play the instrument. Oh yeah, that reminds me of that film in a weird way. But I liked their musical sequences. It was very sweet and touching. It's again this way that cinema can really cut to the chase with telling the audience and communicating and making us feel something in a very quick amount of time. The idea, and we've seen it so much in art, in music, obviously itself, but in film, the idea of this shared appreciation and love of the arts
Hmm.
can just quickly communicate that these characters are in love with each other. Like him grabbing out the saw and her grabbing out this, and they're two different ways of playing the same song together. Is very like very great way that this movie understands the craft and understands, like, we don't need long dialogue scenes, we don't need this. You know how movies work, you know how stories work. This is how we're going to get
Yeah,
to that,
and
and
they
it's
come
a
from
recurring thing.
very different contexts, and their instruments are completely different, but the thing that they love at the center of it is the same, and
Mm.
that's the bond.
That's the bond, and it's very good. I liked his relationship actually with the Mademoiselle, the whore of the den of iniquity. But I liked his little relationship with her because they're both genuinely nice to each other, and she's upset that she keeps being in these compromised positions with him where it's like, oh no, it looks like I'm having an affair with him. I'm not. Oh no, I just want a friend. Like when he helped her get her underwear back with the
Mm,
Time for Australian,
the Australian.
she seemed genuinely enthralled by all of that and not like turned on. This kind of character, the vixen type, would be like, ooh, he's ew, how romantic and sexy. Instead, she's like, oh, great, my friend got my underwear. Oh, wow, awesome. He has a cool thing. Neat. Oh, wow. It's so, oh, I'm going to perform with him. He's doing a little act, and we're going to do a little dance sequence together. So when the love interest comes in and walks in and thinks, like, oh, here we go. Now there's drama. That character, the vixen's reaction, the Mademoiselle's reaction, she reacts so genuinely, like, oh no, oh no, this is a mistake. We've been caught in this bad moment. Oh gee whiz. And I thought that made her one of the standout characters as well, because she's not that absurd of a character. Relatively speaking, in this movie, her character is one of the most normal people, weirdly.
Mm.
Like, what her thing or what her perceived image is. But the more you get to know her, the more you're like, nah, she's just kind of like a normal woman just trying to get on by, really.
Yeah, I'm struggling to recall a lot of her actually from watching it, because she did fly a bit under the radar. But I remember, obviously, yeah, the underwear scene, the when she gets kidnapped, those
Oh, yeah.
moments. Yeah.
The very beginning where she gets the discount and she gets more than everyone else, and she's very buxom, and she has like the very elaborate outfit, and everyone's like, oh, we hate her so much. And then the reveal that she's having sex with the butcher, and like that's a part of the whole deal. But no, if you ever do rewatch it, she's one to keep an eye on, because she has a lot more humanity to her than you may expect going in with the type of character she is. Still allowed to be silly and funny and sexy and all of that, but still a lot more fun there.
Yeah, I wonder if I'd enjoy this film watching it with a group.
Oh, I would hope so. I would hope so. We haven't talked about him, the butcher.
Hmm.
I thought you would like the butcher. He seems
Yeah,
like a
he's.
you would play this character yourself
Oh,
type
that would be
character.
fun to play. Yeah. Yeah. When he's normal, he reminded me a lot of the YouTuber Mike's Class a little
Oh,
bit. But
interesting.
then when he does the silly face, the menacing face, he looks a bit different.
Oh, indeed. He was awesome. He knows pretty much every actor in this knows the right tone, and
Mm.
he knows the tones to play where he can be funny, serious, threatening, caring, and knows how to again make these mix together well. Whether these scenes where he's scary but he's funny at the same time, or scenes where he's genuinely an intimidating threat, and then other scenes where he's caring but he's scary, and you're like, oh, I don't know how to feel about this. I like the little stretch in which he tried to redeem himself because he overheard the conversation about how bad people, there are no purely evil people. There are just, people who may not understand that they're doing bad or so on. And he was moved by that and thought like if he parroted that, he could believe it. But then things worked out in a way he was like, nah, fuck it. I'm just going to kill this guy. I need to kill this man. He's making my daughter turn against me, and she already doesn't want to talk to me. So I hate him even more.
Can't remember who it was too, but he had that one scene where it's like, "Oh, you and I, let's play a little game." And it's like, I'm gonna say this, you're gonna react like this, and then the noise is gonna happen.
Oh, the elderly lady,
Yeah,
the one that he eventually does kill, and they eat her. Yeah, she was to be a trap for him. That was a great scene too. Okay. One of the greatest physical comedic bits of this movie, you mentioned the woman who's always trying to kill herself.
mm-hmm.
Well, she's one of a double act of characters in case people haven't seen this film, because she has I guess it's her husband.
I think it's her husband. Yeah.
And he always comes in, or often comes in after she's tried to kill herself, and gives this like big exaggerated like, oh dear look on his face. He often says her name in like this very huffy tone of like, oh yeah. But he was one I remembered. All of these years, I always remembered the image of him at the end when she's tried to kill herself with like a noose and pills and a gun and all of that. And he just like gives her like this big, exaggerated, like long form, like hangdog shaking of the head, like, oh dear, look. And he's like really elegant looking, like he looks like he's like wearing a smoking jacket, has a slicked hair, like he's really snooty, but then he has like this forlorn look.
Yeah, he kind of, in a weird way, reminded me. We watched that a couple of years ago on a movie night. We watched the British film Gaslighting.
Oh, yes.
Where it was about, the husband who's making the woman think that she's gone crazy. And yeah, a lot of the times where the one that I remember is not actually one of the times she tried to kill herself, but when she saw the underground people like climbing up her little rubbish chute, she's like, there's someone in there. And then he looked in there, no one was there, and he looked at her with like disapproving look, and she gave this reaction of like, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Maybe I made a mistake or something. It was like, ooh.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's probably, a part of this film's identity, like what it took from, because she is getting gaslit. There is actually a person whispering to her to go kill herself. And we find out that out later. It's one of the two craftsmen, the people who are making like the moo cow tins. And then those two start fist fighting at the end. It's like, you were the one behind this. And they just start fist fighting and beating each other up. One of them, strange thing, if you watch the end credits, they credit everyone in the movie. There's like a bit of it still, and they say the actor name.
Yep.
One of those guys is just Rufus.
I saw that, yeah.
Just Rufus. That's it.
Like the actor name?
Yeah, that's his name. The actor's name. Like he's Cher or something. Just Rufus. That gave me a good laugh.
We all know Rufus.
We all know a Rufus, of course. What did you feel about the climax of the film as the tables have turned and the tenants and the butcher are like, we've had enough's enough. We need to kill this man. We need to become like a faceless horde of zombie-like creatures that smash through walls and must consume the flesh of another.
I really liked the visual of when the water just went through the entire apartment building. And like the chaos happened. This is where also the man who lives with the frogs is like, go, you're free. It felt like, for most of the film, there is, the sort of static, worn down quality. Everyone's, kind of tired. They're resigned to things. Now we're seeing all of this like animation happen where like the water's going down. It almost looks like a, place of nature.
I like the calm that happened before when two leads are in the bathroom that's filling up with water and they're just swimming and they kiss each other underneath the water. And it's like the first time they've really kissed. And they could die here and there's a threat outside and everything could go wrong. But in this moment, there's this calm beauty.
Hmm.
And the film constantly finds that in all of this. And then, yes, the door gets open and hell is unleashed and everyone's washed away except for that one woman and who's screaming the whole entire time. And then she eventually walks down. But I like how we kept saying it, the Australian, which is our main man has a certain type of blade.
It's like a cross between a boomerang, a shuriken, and the letter M.
Oh, I was going to say a Swiss Army knife thing too. But yeah, and it's a thing where he throws it and it's a knife that, like a boomerang, will come back. He'll throw it and it'll come back. And it's set up earlier and then it's set up again and then it pays off again. And it's actually a great payoff because the person who he did it for is there to know that this is what's happening. And she's the one, the vixen mademoiselle, she's the one that makes it happen because she gets a hold of the Australian and she gives it to the butcher knowing that it will probably kill the butcher.
Yeah, the butcher like throws it at our main guy, right?
Yes.
Throws
and
it at the main guy.
Just by this much.
Yeah, like just right up to his eyes and then comes back.
And it hits the butcher in his forehead. It's jammed in there. And the physical comedy is great, but I just love again the absolute absurdity and strangeness, but also it's quiet. It's the thing of he has it in his brain and he's like
he's still alive for like
for a good
half
while.
a minute, yeah.
And he's talking to people. It's like, is there something there? And people aren't acknowledging it.
He's like
not talking
he's like
to
in
him.
disbelief that like I could be dying right now. This is happening, right?
There's a thing here, right? You can see this. No, okay.
He like slowly turns around.
He grabs
to
a
face
chair
them.
to sit down, and he's just like, he's just like shaking his head, like I'm dying. This is wow. And then
It's
his
like
nose starts to bleed, and then he's gone, just limp. It's not even like a huge like, oh, I'm dead. Just quietly, oh, he's good.
It's like
that's it. He's gone.
Yeah, it's like he just lost a like I don't know card game or something, and he's in shock. Like, did I just lose? Like, I can't believe it.
I can't lose. I have all of the grain and corn. That's money in this world, and I have all of it. That can't be. I remember that being the big bombastic ending where the floor falls out and heroes are clinging on to pieces of debris and piping to the wall to stay up above, and the Australian knife gets thrown, it comes back. But I do like the end where things are restored. The evil has been vanquished, and now they can sit on the rooftops and play their instruments, and the kids are there too, and they're doing their thing.
And as we said before, the yellow is gone.
The yellow is gone, and yes, the serenity has come into full bloom, and there we are, and we just move on. It feels very folk-tale-y, fairy tale like in a weird way. Like this feels like a parable, but also not. It's just
like the lumberjack killed the fox, and the grandma's dead, but at least the bad guy's gone.
And that's the beauty of a film like this, where I keep wanting to say, "Oh, it reminds me of this thing and this thing," or this movie reminds me of Delicatessens, but it all comes back to the originality. It still has originality. It still has a voice of its own. Yes, I can point to things that probably inspired it or was inspired by it, but at the end of it, it still has its own touch, its own abilities to do these things, which is always something to commend because when you encounter a bad movie, say, that's the thing where it's like, oh, I've seen this before. This is so trite or not very creative or rip off or so on and so forth. And, you and I all often talk about this, the pushback of like tropes and sometimes even cliches being bad. It's like, well, they exist for reasons. And it's not like this film is not doing any of those things, but it's doing them in a way that feels very honest. It feels very genuine. It feels very true to what they are doing. It feels like in a way, a filmmaker or someone who's watched a bunch of these things for years and said, oh, I'd like to do it this way. And they got to do it that way.
It used, tropes, but it carved its own identity.
So I recommend it. I enjoy it. I think it's well worth everyone's time. I'm keen to give more of these filmmakers stuff a watch. I know there's 2 directors and writers, and I know that they've split off and done other projects together. I think Amelie is like one of them, maybe, but I'm not too sure. Again, I'm not as ingrained. This is the one I've seen, and from the little bits of other work I've seen of theirs fully or just I'm aware of, I'm like, oh yeah, this is clearly the thing that they launch off from here. This is their first feature. So
is this film widely known?
Yeah, it was pretty popular when it came out, like for the type of, type of movie it is, like how there are movies we've covered on the podcast, like, is The Guest popular? It's like, well, yeah, for that type of crowd who know about these type of things. So
right, yeah.
I think this one gained a lot of, acclaim when it came out.
Yeah, because I remember one of the big things you kept emphasizing, like, oh, this is a known film.
Yes, this is, again, like when we talk about like French film, in the West, let's just talk about the non-French places. Yeah, the Delicatessens is one's like, oh, people know about Delicatessens. And again, it's also like the filmmakers have gone on to make bigger films that are well known. And the lead actor is in a bunch of projects, both English language and French. And he's still around and he's still doing stuff. So yeah, there's definitely a legacy to the movie that lives outside of when it first came out.
Yeah.
So.
I guess just hearing like, oh, this is a known film, I had an expectation of like, oh, this is going to be one of those cases where I watch the film and it's going to be like, oh, this is what that thing is from.
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting because we've kind of already done a little bit of that with other films we've watched, just specifically from one Australian filmmaker, but still it's something to really think about. But that was my recommendation for the podcast. I mean, you're interested in seeing it again at some point at least.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. Like I said, I actually enjoyed having it on. There were a lot of things in it that I gravitated towards, and it has its own identity, and it has visuals that I really enjoyed. So absolutely, I recommend it. And one day I do hope to rewatch it.
We will not be leaving Europe because the next movie recommendation is a European film. It's a Czech film, of course.
I was hoping we would be doing a Czech one.
Because Bartek went through a bunch of the recommendations that we've been getting from you, the listening people. That's right, you, the listening people, can pitch films our way. We add them to the list. Sometimes we have to do some homework to get copies of them, and this is a case where we got recommended a bunch of Czech films, which we wanted because we love Czech/Czechoslovakian movies, and we were given a whole slew of them, a good
half dozen.
A good half dozen or more.
And I managed to find all but one.
All but one, but hey, that's pretty good, and who knows, that might surface. That often happens. I will give them this. The Czech films, 9 times out of 10 ones we've watched will have a thing at the beginning letting you know that some historical archive organization is putting this through a restoration right now because this is important.
One of the ones that I found us a copy of has that for the first minute.
And these are movies that often are from the 60s, 70s, or early 80s. And the fact that not only are they still somewhat available even for the Czechs, but for people like us down here in Australia to even get subtitle copies for, pretty lucky. Think about that's actually pretty damn good. So they seem to care about their film industry well enough. But we are going to be talking about the 1975 film How to Drown Dr. I don't know how to pronounce this.
Was it like Mráček or something like that?
The lawyer. So that's something to know. We have not seen this film. We know nothing about this movie. I haven't even looked up who it's directed by, who it's written by, who the actors are, the plot. All I have is the title, and the poster is of a little fish with a lady's eye in it. So it kind of looks like the fish from, what was that children's book that we had? The rainbow
rainbow-colored fish?
Yeah, it kind of looks like, but it's not that type, but it kind of has that look.
An esoteric question for just us. Is this the one that on the list is higher up than all the other Czech
It's
films?
the first one on our
Okay.
list at the moment.
I'm remembering where I found this one, yeah.
But we will be talking about that next time. Please go out of your way and try and find this, listening people. It's out there. You can find copies. It's going to be hopefully worth the watch. We have a blast talking about foreign cinema, and I know sometimes it can be a little bit of a pain in the butt for you people out there to find copies to watch along, but we always stress that you should, because oftentimes they're very rewarding, and Czech films we hold very near and dear.
It's always a treat so far. It's always been a treat.
You break them out on a special occasion, with the so
it's been over a year since the last one we did.
It's been a while. So
Einstein.
We will be back next time to talk about that film. You can find all of the information in the description of this episode, as well as our social medias and our email address. But if you do want to contact us, you can do so through those. The email is
spitandpolished@gmail.com.
Let us know your thoughts and opinions on the films we have discussed, as well as recommending films yourself. It has been a wondrous time, Bartek, talking to you on this here podcast about a snooty French film.
And what was that film called again, Ryan?
Oh, Delicatessens.
Is it Delicatessens or Sin?
Who cares?
Yeah, we didn't care about the film anyway.
No, Delicatessen? I keep saying Delicatessens.
I've been hearing that. I'm like, I think it's Delicatessen.
Either way, it is the deli film.
Whenever I Googled it, it would keep showing me like locations of like butchers and stuff. I'm like, no, the film.
The film from 1991.
Because I guess it's a French word for like butcher or something.
Well, it is yes, they do exist. Yes. And yes, they're meat-based things. Yes. You can go to a deli. I mean, Italians have delis. Yeah, French deli. Yeah, delis. That's where you go. It's another word. It's a type. It's more than As you saw in the movie, they have a bunch of stuff in a nice deli. But that's it. Thank you so much for listening, people. And until next time, escargot.
That was almost as funny as my dad's joke.